I sat in my one-bedroom apartment on Thanksgiving Day, staring at a microwaved turkey dinner from the dollar store, when my phone rang. It was my son Daniel, the doctor, the one I'd worked 3 jobs to put through medical school. "Dad," he said, and I could hear that voice, that warm, excited voice I hadn't heard in years. "Why didn't you tell us you won the lottery?" My hands started shaking. Not because of the $42 million, but because in that moment, I finally understood what I'd been worth to my children all along. Absolutely nothing. Until I had something they wanted. Before we go any further, if you love stories like this, real stories about real pain and real lessons, hit that like button right now. And drop a comment telling me what part of the world you're watching from. It matters to me. It really does. Because what I'm about to tell you, I've never told anyone the full truth. Not my pastor. Not my neighbors. Nobody. My name is Robert James Mitchell. I'm 73 years old now. But this story begins back when I was still young enough to believe that love was something you earned through sacrifice. I lived in Detroit, Michigan, in a neighborhood called Brightmoor, where the houses leaned into each other like tired old men, and the factory smoke painted the sky gray every morning. I was a father of 3 beautiful children, and I thought I was building a legacy. Turns out I was building a graveyard for my own heart. I remember the exact moment I became a father for the first time. September 14th, 1976. I was 26 years old, standing in the hallway of Detroit Receiving Hospital with paint still under my fingernails from my shift at the auto plant. My wife, Gloria, God rest her soul, she was in that delivery room screaming, and I was out there praying harder than I had ever prayed in my life. When that nurse came out holding my daughter Rachel, wrapped in a pink blanket with her tiny fist punching at the air, I made a promise right there in that hallway. I promised that baby girl she would never want for anything, never struggle like I struggled, never go to bed hungry like I did as a boy in Alabama, wearing shoes with cardboard stuffed in the soles because my daddy couldn't afford new ones. I was going to be different. I was going to be the father I never had. Gloria and I, we didn't have much. We lived in a 2-bedroom house on Bentler Street that we rented for $85 a month. The roof leaked when it rained. The furnace died every winter, but it was ours, and we filled it with love. When Daniel came along 2 years later, we gave Rachel our bedroom and slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. We didn't mind. We were young. We were building something. Then Lisa arrived in 1981, and suddenly we had 3 mouths to feed on my factory salary. Gloria worked part-time at a beauty salon, braiding hair and doing perms, but most of her money went to keeping the kids in decent clothes. I can still see her at that kitchen table, counting out coins to make sure we had enough for milk and bread. She never complained, not once. She'd just look at me with those deep brown eyes and say, "We're blessed, Robert. We got healthy babies and each other. That's all that matters." But I wanted more for them. I wanted everything. When Rachel turned 7, she came home from school talking about a music program. They were teaching violin. She was so excited. Her little gap-toothed smile just glowing as she told me about it. "Daddy, Mrs. Henderson says I got a gift. She says I could be really good if I practice." The violin rental was $35 a month. $35 we didn't have. But I looked at my baby girl's face and I couldn't say no. So I started skipping lunch at the factory. I'd work my 8-hour shift on nothing but coffee and whatever someone might share from their lunchbox. I lost 20 pounds in 3 months. Gloria noticed, kept asking if I was sick. I told her I was just trying to get in shape. I never told her I was starving myself so Rachel could make music. And you know what? It was worth it. Every time I heard her practicing in our tiny living room, that violin singing even though she was still learning, I felt like I was doing something right. Daniel was different from his sisters. Quiet, serious, always had his nose in a book. His teachers started telling us in middle school that he was special, gifted, could be a doctor if he applied himself. A doctor, my son. I'd barely finished high school myself, and here was my boy with the grades and the brains to be a doctor. But college wasn't cheap. Community college, maybe. But if he wanted to go to University of Michigan, if he wanted to go to medical school, that was real money. Money we'd never see working at the factory and the beauty shop. So I made another decision. I took a night job at a warehouse loading trucks from midnight to 6 in the morning. I'd get off my factory shift at 4, come home and sleep for a few hours, then head out at 11:30. Gloria cried when I told her. She said it would kill me. I told her it would kill me faster if I didn't give my son his shot. I worked those 2 jobs for 15 years. 15 years of sleeping 4 hours a night. 15 years of my body breaking down piece by piece. But Daniel got into medical school. He walked across that stage and got his acceptance letter. And when he hugged me, I felt every missed hour of sleep was worth it. Lisa was my baby, my youngest. The one who looked most like Gloria, with her high cheekbones and that smile that could light up a room. She was the social one, always bringing friends around, always talking about her dreams. She wanted a big wedding when she got older. She used to cut pictures out of bridal magazines and show them to her mama. When I get married, I want it to be perfect, she'd say, like a princess. When she met Jennifer in college, a sweet girl from Ansta, Arbor with red hair and freckles, and told us she was in love, I didn't blink. Love is love. That's what I told her. And when they got engaged in 2008, and Lisa started planning that dream wedding she'd always wanted, I knew what I had to do. The wedding was going to cost $40,000. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the dress. $40,000. I was 61 years old. I'd been saving for retirement, had about $52,000 in my pension. I cashed it out, all of it. I walked into that bank, and I withdrew every penny I'd saved for my old age, and I gave my daughter her dream wedding. I walked her down the aisle in a rented tuxedo, my feet aching in borrowed shoes, and I smiled the whole time. Because that's what fathers do. But here's what nobody tells you about sacrifice. Nobody tells you that the people you sacrifice for might not remember, might not care, might see it all as just what they deserved. After the weddings, all 3 of them, because I helped pay for Rachel's and gave Daniel money for his too. After they all moved into their big houses in their nice neighborhoods, something changed. The phone calls got shorter. The visits got rarer. And I started to feel like a stranger in my own children's lives. That Thanksgiving, sitting alone in my apartment with my microwave dinner, I realized something that broke me. I'd given them everything. And somehow, I'd ended up with nothing. I need you to understand something about the kind of father I tried to be. This wasn't just about money or sacrifice. This was about showing up, being present, being the man in the room when things got hard. My own father, rest his soul, he wasn't around much. He worked himself to death in the cotton fields of Alabama, and by the time I was 16, he was gone. Heart attack. Dropped dead in the field on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember my mama telling me, "Your daddy loved you, Robert. He just didn't know how to show it." I promised myself my kids would never have to wonder. They would know. They would feel it every single day. When Rachel was in high school, she auditioned for the Detroit Youth Symphony. I'm talking about the real deal. The kind of program that could open doors, get you scholarships, maybe even a career. She practiced 6 hours a day for that audition. I'd come home from my factory shift, exhausted, my hands cramping from working the line, and I'd sit on our old couch and listen to her play. Sometimes I'd fall asleep sitting up, and she'd stop playing and cover me with a blanket. One night, she asked me, "Daddy, you don't have to stay up. I know you're tired." I looked at her and said, "Baby girl, listening to you play is the only thing that makes me feel alive anymore." She made it into that symphony. First chair violin. I went to every single performance. Didn't matter if I had to work the night shift. Didn't matter if it was snowing or raining. I was there in that audience. Sometimes the only black father in a sea of white faces. And I'd watch my daughter make magic with that instrument. Those were good years. Hard, but good. Daniel's medical school journey nearly killed me. Not just the money, though Lord knows that was heavy, but the worry. The constant fear that I wasn't doing enough, giving enough, supporting enough. He studied at Wayne State University for undergrad, then got into Michigan State College of Human Medicine. 4 years of undergraduate, 4 years of medical school, then residency. I helped him with rent. I helped him with books. When his car broke down in his 3rd year, I took out a loan to buy him a used Honda Civic. I was working 3 jobs by then. Factory during the day, warehouse at night, and weekend shifts at a grocery store, stocking shelves. I was 62 years old, my knees screaming every time I climbed stairs, my back a constant knot of pain. But I kept going because my son was going to be a doctor. Dr. Daniel Mitchell, the first doctor in our family. The first person to make it out of the cycle of just surviving. When he graduated in 2010, I sat in that auditorium at the Breslin Center, and I cried like a baby. Gloria was gone by then. Cancer took her in 2005, but I felt her there with me. I felt her saying, "You did good, Robert. You did real good." Lisa's wedding in 2008 wasn't just expensive. It was elaborate. Jennifer's family had money, and they wanted to match our contribution. But Lisa insisted her daddy was paying for the bride's side. "That's traditional," she said. I didn't tell her I'd cashed out my entire pension. I didn't tell her I'd be living on Social Security and whatever odd jobs I could find. I just smiled and wrote the checks. The wedding was at the Detroit Athletic Club. 200 guests, an 8-piece band, flowers everywhere, white roses and orchids that cost more than my first car. Lisa looked like an angel in her dress. This huge white gown with crystals sewn into the bodice. When I took her arm to walk her down the aisle, she whispered, "Thank you, Daddy, for everything." And I thought, this is it. This is what it's all for. These moments. These memories. I thought she'd remember. I thought they'd all remember. Rachel got married in 2006 to a man named Brad Hutchinson. White guy from Bloomfield Hills, with family money and a business degree from University of Michigan. I liked Brad at first. He seemed respectful, called me sir, shook my hand firm. Rachel met him at a music conference in Chicago. He was a music producer, had his own studio, worked with local artists. They had a smaller wedding than Lisa's. Rachel wasn't into the big show, but I still helped pay for it. Gave them $15,000 I'd saved up from my warehouse job. $15,000 that was supposed to go toward fixing the roof on my house. The roof kept leaking for another 3 years until I finally scraped together enough to patch it. But Rachel was happy, and that's what mattered. She kept playing violin professionally, did session work for recordings, taught private lessons. She was making her dream come true, and I was so proud I could burst. But somewhere in those years of weddings and graduations and new houses, something shifted. I can't tell you exactly when. It was gradual, like watching the sun set. You don't notice it getting darker until suddenly you're sitting in the shadows. The calls became less frequent. Instead of every Sunday, it was every other Sunday. Then once a month. Then only on holidays. When I'd call them, they'd sound distracted, busy. Dad, can I call you back? I'm in the middle of something. They never called back. I'd leave messages. Hey, baby, just calling to check on you. Love you. Nothing. The visits got weird, too. Stiff, like they were tolerating me instead of welcoming me. I'd show up at their houses with my little gifts, a pie I'd baked, some old photos I'd found, a book I thought they'd like, and they'd take them with these tight smiles. Thanks, Dad. You didn't have to. But the words felt hollow, empty, like they wished I hadn't. The first time I really felt it, that distance, that coldness, was when I visited Daniel and his wife Meredith in their house in Royal Oak. Beautiful house. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a yard with a pool. They'd moved in 6 months earlier, and I'd only seen it in pictures. I called ahead, said I wanted to visit on a Saturday. Daniel said, sure, come around noon. So I drove my old Ford pickup, the one with the rusted bed and the engine that knocked, 45 minutes from my apartment in Brightmoor to their suburban paradise. I brought a housewarming gift, a framed picture of Daniel's graduation day, me and him with our arms around each other, both of us smiling so big. I thought he'd like it for his office. When I pulled up, I sat in my truck for a minute, just looking at the house. It was perfect, clean, the kind of place I'd dreamed of giving my kids when they were little, the kind of place I'd worked myself half to death to make possible. I walked up to the front door, gift in hand, wearing my Sunday best, a button-down shirt I'd ironed twice, and my good slacks. Meredith answered. She's a thin woman, blonde hair always pulled back tight. Looks like she's never had a hard day in her life. She looked at me standing there, and I swear I saw her face fall, just for a second. Then she fixed it into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Robert, she said. Not Dad, not even Mr. Mitchell, just Robert. We weren't expecting you. I said, I called Daniel yesterday. He said noon. She looked back into the house, then back at me. He's getting ready for his golf game. He probably forgot to mention it. The way she said it, the tone, it made me feel like I was bothering them, like I was some door-to-door salesman instead of the man who'd raised their husband. Daniel came to the door, and he looked uncomfortable, actually uncomfortable to see his own father. "Hey, Dad," he said, not moving to hug me. "I forgot I had this tea time. Rick from the hospital set it up weeks ago." I held out the picture. I just wanted to drop this off. Thought you might want it for your office." He took it, barely looked at it. "Thanks, that's nice." Silence. Awkward, heavy silence. Meredith was practically vibrating with impatience beside him. Finally, I said, "Well, I don't want to keep you. Maybe we can have lunch another time." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, sure. I'll call you." He didn't call me. I stood there on that perfect porch in that perfect neighborhood, and I felt smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. I drove home, and I cried the whole way. Big, ugly sobs that made me have to pull over twice because I couldn't see the road. My son, the boy I'd worked myself into the ground for. The boy I'd sacrificed everything to make into a doctor. He couldn't spare 30 minutes to sit with his father. Rachel's house in Birmingham was even worse. She and Brad had this massive colonial with a circular driveway and a 3-car garage. I'd driven past it a few times, too nervous to stop. But one Sunday, I got up the courage. I didn't call ahead this time. I'd learned that calling ahead gave them time to make excuses. I just showed up around 2 in the afternoon with a bag of her favorite cookies, the oatmeal raisin ones I used to make when she was little. Brad answered the door, and the look on his face was pure annoyance. "Robert," he said, crossing his arms. "Again?" Again, like I visited all the time. I'd been to their house exactly twice in the year since they'd moved in. Twice. "I thought I'd stop by and see Rachel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is she home?" He sighed, actually sighed. "She's working on a composition. She doesn't like to be interrupted when she's working." I could hear the violin from inside. She was playing something beautiful, something that made my chest ache. "I'll just say, hi, quick," I said. "I brought cookies." Brad didn't move from the doorway. He actually blocked me. This man I'd helped support when he was starting his business, this man whose wedding I'd helped pay for, was physically blocking me from seeing my daughter. "She's really busy, Robert. Maybe call first next time." Then he closed the door. Closed it right in my face. I stood there on that porch, holding that bag of cookies like a fool, and I felt something inside me break. I left the cookies on the doormat and walked back to my truck. Later that night, Rachel texted me. Not a call, a text. "Thanks for the cookies, Dad. Brad said you stopped by. Sorry I was working. We'll get together soon." We never did. Soon never came. And I stopped baking cookies because there was nobody to bake them for. Lisa and Jennifer were different, but not better. They lived in Ann Arbor, in a condo near the university. Modern. Expensive. The kind of place with a doorman and a gym in the building. I visited once, and Jennifer made it clear I wasn't welcome. She's a professor at U of M, teaches women's studies, and she's one of those people who's always right about everything. Smart, educated. And she looked at me like I was some relic from a past she wanted to forget. I came for dinner. Lisa had actually invited me this time, and I brought flowers for their table. Yellow roses, Lisa's favorite. Jennifer took them and said, "We don't really do cut flowers. They're wasteful." Then she put them in the trash, right there, in front of me. I watched my flowers, the ones I'd spent $15 on from my grocery store budget, go into the garbage. Lisa didn't say anything, just gave me this apologetic look and changed the subject. Dinner was torture. I tried to make conversation, asked about their work, their lives. Jennifer answered in short sentences, checked her phone constantly. When I told a story about Lisa as a kid, how she used to put on concerts for the neighborhood kids, Jennifer interrupted. Lisa's told me all these stories, Robert, many times. Robert. They all called me Robert now. Like I wasn't Dad anymore. Like I'd lost the right to that title. I ate my food, some kind of quinoa thing that tasted like cardboard, and I left as soon as I could. On the drive home, Lisa called. Dad, I'm sorry about Jennifer. She's just stressed with work. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why my daughter was apologizing for her wife treating me like garbage in their home. But I didn't. I just said, it's okay, baby. I understand. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand any of it. The holidays became my personal hell. Thanksgiving 2012 was the first time I spent it alone. All 3 kids had plans. Daniel and Meredith were going to her parents' house in Grosse Pointe. Rachel and Brad were doing Friendsgiving with his music industry friends. Lisa and Jennifer were flying to Jennifer's family in Boston. You understand, don't you, Dad? Daniel said on the phone. Meredith's parents haven't seen us in months. I understood. I understood that I ranked below everyone else. I understood that the man who'd raised them, who'd sacrificed everything for them, didn't even make the list. I bought a turkey dinner from Family Dollar for $3.99, microwaved it, ate it alone in my apartment while watching football. The apartment was so quiet I could hear my own chewing. That's when I started to really see it, really understand what had happened. I'd given them everything I had, and they'd taken it all and left me with nothing. Not even a seat at their table. Christmas 2013 was when I finally admitted to myself that something was fundamentally broken. I'd been holding on to hope, telling myself it was just busy schedules, just life getting in the way. But that Christmas I saw the truth clearly for the first time, and it nearly destroyed me. I'd saved up for months to buy gifts for my children. Real gifts. Not just token things, but thoughtful presents that showed I still knew them, still paid attention. For Daniel, I bought a vintage medical book from the 1800s I'd found at an estate sale. He'd always loved medical history. For Rachel, I found this beautiful bow for her violin, handcrafted by a luthier in Chicago. Cost me $200 I didn't have. For Lisa, I got a first edition of her favorite book, Their Eyes Were Watching God, by Zora Neale Hurston. I'd been searching for it for a year. I called them all in early December to ask about Christmas plans. We're doing Christmas here, Daniel said. Just us and Meredith's family. It'll be really crowded, Dad. Maybe we can see you before. Before, like I was the preliminary round before the real event. Rachel said, Brad's family is coming into town. It's going to be chaos. Why don't you come by the day after? The day after Christmas. Like I was some obligation to check off the list. Lisa didn't even pretend. We're doing a quiet Christmas, just the 2 of us. We'll see you in New Year's, maybe? Maybe. I hung up the phone, and I sat in my apartment, and I realized I had nowhere to go. My children, the 3 people I'd built my entire life around, didn't have room for me on the most important family day of the year. But I'm stubborn. Or maybe I was just desperate. I decided to show up anyway. On Christmas morning, I loaded up my truck with all 3 gifts wrapped in paper I'd carefully chosen, and I drove to Daniel's house first. It was 8 in the morning. I figured I'd catch them before Meredith's family arrived. The house was lit up like a damn department store. Decorations everywhere. A wreath on the door that probably cost more than my monthly rent. I rang the doorbell, holding Daniel's gift, my heart pounding. Meredith answered in a silk robe, her face a mask of shock and irritation. "Robert, what are you doing here?" I tried to smile. "Merry Christmas. I brought Daniel's gift. I thought maybe I could—" She cut me off. "Daniel's still sleeping. We told you we were busy today." I could hear voices inside. Laughter, music, the sounds of family, the sounds of a celebration I wasn't part of. "I know," I said, my voice cracking. "I just wanted to drop this off. 5 minutes, please." She took the gift from my hands like it was contaminated. "I'll make sure he gets it." "Thanks, Robert." Then she closed the door. Not slammed it. That would have been honest. She closed it softly, politely, like she was dismissing a delivery driver. I stood there in the cold. It was snowing. Big, fat flakes that stuck to my coat. And I felt my heart actually hurt. Like physically hurt in my chest. I walked back to my truck, and I sat there for a minute, watching through the window. I could see Daniel come downstairs in pajamas his wife probably bought him. I could see him hug his mother-in-law. I could see him laughing. He looked happy, happier than I'd seen him in years. And I wasn't part of it. I drove to Rachel's house. Same thing. Brad answered, said Rachel was in the shower, took the gift, shut the door. 30 seconds. That's how long I got with my daughter's husband on Christmas morning. 30 seconds. Lisa didn't even answer her door. I knocked 3 times. I could see lights on inside. I could hear voices. They were home. They just didn't want to see me. I drove back to my apartment with Lisa's gift still in the truck. I carried it up the stairs, my knees screaming with every step, and I sat it on my kitchen table. I looked at that rap book, and I started to laugh. Not a happy laugh, a broken laugh, a laugh that turned into sobs. I cried for 3 hours straight that Christmas morning. I cried for every sacrifice I'd made, every meal I'd skipped, every hour of sleep I'd lost, every dream I'd deferred. I cried for the father I thought I was, and the stranger I'd become. And when I was done crying, I made myself a promise. I was done begging for crumbs from my own children. I was done showing up uninvited. I was done pretending that love could be one-sided. If they wanted to see me, they knew where I lived. They knew my number. I would wait. I would wait for them to remember they had a father. The wait was long. Months turned into a year. I heard from them on my birthday. Texts, not calls. "Happy birthday, Dad," with a string of emojis. I heard from them on Father's Day. Cards in the mail, generic ones from the drugstore with pre-printed messages, and their signatures scrawled at the bottom. No visits, no invitations, no real connection. I stopped calling them. I stopped showing up. I started to accept my new reality. I was 72 years old, living alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was falling apart around me, and my children had moved on with their lives without me. I'd sit in my recliner, the same one Gloria and I bought in 1985, held together now with duct tape, and I'd wonder where I went wrong. Did I love them too much? Not enough? Did I give them so much they thought they deserved everything without having to give anything back? Or was it simpler than that? Was I just not worth their time anymore? My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, she was the only person who really talked to me during that time. She was 84. Lived alone, too. Lost her husband to diabetes. We'd sit in the stoop some evenings when the weather was nice, and she'd ask about my kids. At first, I'd lie. They're doing great. Real busy, Important jobs. But eventually, I told her the truth. They don't come around much, I said one night. She patted my hand with her wrinkled fingers. Baby, sometimes the people we love the most hurt us the deepest. That's just the truth of it. I asked her if she saw her kids. She shook her head. My son's in California. Calls once a month if I'm lucky. My daughter's in Florida. Sends me a check every Christmas like that makes up for 30 years of absence. We sat there in silence, two old people who'd given everything to their children and been left alone to face the end. That's when I started buying lottery tickets. I know what you're thinking. Lottery tickets are a waste of money, a fool's tax. But when you're 73 years old, living on $900 a month in Social Security, eating ramen noodles 3 nights a week, and your own children can't be bothered to return your calls, you start thinking differently about hope. Even false hope is better than no hope at all. Every Tuesday and Friday, I'd walk down to the corner store, Big Mike's Party Store on Schaefer Highway, and I'd buy 2 tickets. Mega Millions and Powerball. $4 total. That was half of what I'd budget for food that day. But I didn't care. Those tickets gave me something to dream about. Something to look forward to. I'd sit in my apartment and imagine what I'd do with the money, not fancy things. I'd imagine paying off my rent for the year, fixing my truck, maybe taking a trip somewhere I'd never been. New Orleans. I'd always wanted to see New Orleans. But mostly, if I'm honest, I imagined my kids' faces when they found out. I imagined calling them up and saying, "Guess what? Your old man hit the jackpot." I imagined them being proud of me, being excited for me, maybe even wanting to celebrate with me. Stupid, right? Still trying to win their approval, even through a lottery ticket. But that's what love does to you. It makes you stupid. It makes you hope, when hope is the most dangerous thing you can hold on to. Every week, I'd check my numbers. Every week, nothing. But I kept buying those tickets because they were the only thing in my life that felt like possibility. Everything else felt like slow death. My body wearing out, my money running out, my children moving further and further away until I couldn't even see them anymore. Tuesday, November 3rd, 2015. That's the day everything changed. I remember it was raining, that cold November rain that goes straight through your coat into your bones. I'd just gotten my Social Security deposit, $912 for the month, and I knew I had to make it stretch. Rent was $450, utilities another $100, food, medicine, bus fare for the rest. I was doing the math in my head as I walked to Big Mike's. I could afford the lottery tickets if I cut back on meat for the week. Just chicken and eggs. I could make that work. Mike was behind the counter like always, a big Chaldean man with a smile that showed all his gold teeth. "Robert," he said, "my favorite customer. The usual?" I nodded. He printed out my tickets. 2 numbers I'd been playing for 3 years. Rachel's birthday, Daniel's birthday, Lisa's birthday, Gloria's birthday, my birthday, and the anniversary of the day I married Gloria. Those were my numbers. My life in numbers. I walked home in the rain, tickets in my pocket, and I stopped at the church's chicken on the corner. I'd saved $5 from last month and I used it to buy a 2-piece meal with a biscuit. My treat for the week. I ate it in my apartment watching the news, and I fell asleep in my chair like I did most nights. The Powerball drawing was at 11, but I'd check my numbers in the morning. No rush. I knew I hadn't won. I never won. But when I woke up around 6 the next morning, my back aching from sleeping in the chair, something told me to check. I pulled out my phone, a cheap flip phone I'd had for 5 years, and I pulled up the lottery website. I had to squint to see the numbers on that tiny screen. Then I pulled out my ticket. I checked the first number. Match. Okay, that happens sometimes. Second number. Match. My heart started beating faster. Third number. Match. Fourth. Fifth. I stood up so fast I got dizzy. All 5 white balls. And the Powerball. Every single number. All 6. I checked again. Then I called the lottery hotline because I thought maybe the website was wrong. The automated voice confirmed the numbers. I'd matched all 6. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my phone. I sat back down in my chair, and I just stared at that ticket. $42 million. $42 million. I started laughing, then crying, then laughing again. I thought about all the years I'd struggled, all the meals I'd skipped, all the times I'd chosen between medicine and food, all the shame of being poor in a country that treats poverty like a moral failing. And now, suddenly, I had $42 million. I could pay off everything. I could live comfortably. I could finally stop worrying about money. But you know what the first thought was after that? After the shock and the joy and the relief? The first thought was, I can't wait to tell my kids. Maybe now they'll want to see me. Maybe now I matter. And they thought, that pathetic, desperate thought, should have told me everything I needed to know about what was coming. I didn't call them right away. I wanted to verify everything first, make it official. I took the bus, couldn't afford to fix my truck yet, down to the lottery office on Thursday morning. I had to wait in line behind 3 other winners, smaller amounts, a couple thousand here and there. When it was my turn, I handed over my ticket with shaking hands. The woman behind the counter, a middle-aged black woman with braids and kind eyes, scanned it. Her face went still. Then she looked up at me. "Sir," she said quietly, "do you know what you have here?" I nodded. "I think I won some money." She smiled. "Sir, you won the jackpot. $42 million before taxes. About $26 million after." $26 million. The number was so big it didn't feel real. She called her supervisor. They verified everything. Asked me how I wanted to pay out. Lump sum or annuity. I said lump sum. I was 73. I didn't have time for annuities. They told me the money would be in my account within 2 weeks. They asked if I wanted to go public. I said no. I didn't want my face on the news. Didn't want people coming out of the woodwork. I just wanted my life to finally be easy. But news travels fast when you win the lottery, especially in a neighborhood like mine, where everybody knows everybody else's business. Big Mike at the party store knew. He'd sold the winning ticket. The lottery officials knew. Word spread. By Friday afternoon, my phone started ringing. Numbers I didn't recognize. People I hadn't talked to in years. Old co-workers from the factory. Distant cousins I'd met twice. Everyone suddenly very interested in how I was doing. I didn't answer any of them. But then Friday evening, my phone rang with a number I did recognize. Daniel. My heart jumped into my throat. He never called me anymore. I answered on the first ring. "Dad!" His voice was so warm, so excited, so full of that love I remembered from when he was a boy. "Dad, why didn't you tell us you played the lottery?" I didn't say anything for a second, just held the phone, listening to my son sound happy to talk to me for the first time in years. "I didn't think it mattered," I finally said. "Dad, of course it matters. This is amazing. Congratulations. We should celebrate. Why don't you come stay with us this weekend? Meredith's already preparing your room." My room. Suddenly I had a room in my son's house. Suddenly I was welcome. And in that moment, sitting in my shabby apartment with my duct-taped recliner and my peeling walls, I felt something inside me go cold, clear, like ice water in my veins. I understood. I finally understood. "Let me think about it, son," I said. "I'll call you back." Rachel called 10 minutes later, then Lisa. All three of them. Within an hour, all suddenly concerned about their father. All suddenly wanting to spend time together. All suddenly remembering us they had a dad. I sat there in my apartment as the sun went down, and I thought about all the Christmases I'd spent alone. All the birthdays where I got text messages instead of calls. All the times I'd shown up at their doors and been turned away like I was selling encyclopedias. And now, because I had money, I mattered. Now I was worth their time. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I just sat in my chair and planned what I was going to do next. Because if there's one thing I learned in 73 years of living, it's this. You find out who people really are when money gets involved. And I was about to find out exactly who my children really were. That Saturday morning, all three of my children showed up at my apartment, together. I hadn't seen them all in the same room since Lisa's wedding 7 years ago. I heard them coming up the stairs, their voices mixing together in a way that used to make my heart sing when they were young. Now, it just made me tired. I opened the door before they could knock, and there they stood. Daniel in his expensive golf shirt and khakis, Rachel with her designer purse, Lisa in clothes that cost more than my monthly rent. And behind them, their spouses. Meredith with her tight smile, Brad with his slicked back hair, Jennifer with her arms crossed, like she was doing me a favor just by being there. They were all holding things. Wine bottles, flowers, a gift basket, props. That's what those things were. Props to make this performance look real. "Dad," Rachel said, pushing forward to hug me. She hadn't hugged me in 3 years. And now here she was, wrapping her arms around me like we did this every day. I stood there stiff, not hugging back, and I felt her hesitate. But she covered it with a laugh. "Look at you! You must be so excited." Daniel came in next, shaking my hand, then pulling me into one of those side hugs men do. "The old man did it," he said, grinning. "I always knew you were lucky." Lucky. He thought this was luck. Not the years I'd worked myself to death for them, not the sacrifices. Just luck. Lisa was last, and she at least had the decency to look a little ashamed when our eyes met. "Hi, Daddy," she said softly. I let them all file into my tiny apartment, and I watched them take in the space with barely concealed judgment. The water-stained ceiling, the ancient furniture, the kitchen with its peeling linoleum. This was where their father lived, while they were in their 4-bedroom houses with 3-car garages. Meredith was the worst. She actually wrinkled her nose at my couch before sitting down. "Robert, you really should think about upgrading your living situation now," she said, like she was doing me a favor with her advice. With this kind of money, you could get a really nice condo. Maybe in Royal Oak near us? We could help you look. Help me look. Help me spend my money, she meant. Brad opened the wine he'd brought, some expensive bottle he made a show of uncorking, and poured glasses for everyone. To Robert, he said, raising his glass, the luckiest man in Michigan. They all toasted, all drank, all smiled at me with their empty eyes. I didn't touch my wine. I just watched them. Really watched them. The way they kept glancing at each other. The way Jennifer's leg bounced nervously. The way Daniel kept clearing his throat like he wanted to say something, but didn't know how. They were here for a reason, and it wasn't to celebrate with their father. So, Dad, Daniel finally said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Have you thought about what you're going to do with the money? There it was. Real reason for this visit. I shrugged. Haven't had much time to think about it. Just found out this week. Rachel jumped in. You should really talk to a financial advisor. Someone who can help you manage it properly. Brad knows some people, don't you, Brad? Brad nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. I have a guy. Works with high net worth individuals. He could really help you. Maximize your returns. High net worth individuals. That's what I was now. Not Dad. Not the man who'd raised them. A high net worth individual. Lisa was quieter, but she was thinking. I could see it in her eyes. You could travel, Dad, she said. See all those places you always talked about. New Orleans, California. Jennifer and I could come with you if you want. Keep you company. Keep me company. Or keep an eye on their inheritance. The visit lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of them pretending to care, while obviously calculating how to get their hands on my money. They invited me to dinner the next weekend. All of them. Suddenly my calendar was full of family time I'd been begging for years. As they were leaving, Daniel pulled me aside. Dad, I know we haven't been as close as we should have been. Life got busy. You know how it is. But I want you to know, I love you. We all do. I looked at my son, this man I'd destroyed my body to put through medical school, and I wanted to ask him where this love was 2 Christmases ago when I stood on his porch in the snow. Where was this love when I called him crying on my birthday, and he let it go to voicemail? But I didn't ask. I just nodded. I know, son, I lied. I know. After they left, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by their gifts and their wine and their fake concern, and I felt something harden in my chest, something cold and clear and final. I was going to let this play out. I was going to watch them show me exactly who they were, and then I was going to make a decision that would change everything. The dinner the following Saturday was at Daniel and Meredith's house. The same house where I'd been turned away at the door just 3 years ago. The same house where I wasn't welcome on Christmas. Now, I was the guest of honor. Meredith had cooked, or more likely had it catered, a spread that belonged in a magazine. Prime rib, roasted vegetables, some kind of fancy potato dish with truffle oil. She'd set the table with china I'd never seen before, lit candles, put out cloth napkins. The whole house smelled like expensive food and expensive wine and expensive lies. When I arrived, Daniel met me at the door with a hug. A real hug this time, or at least a better performance of one. Come in, everyone's here. Everyone was indeed there. Rachel and Brad, Lisa and Jennifer, even Meredith's parents, who I'd met exactly twice, and who'd never bothered to learn my name. We sat around the dining room table, and I watched my children perform. That's the only word for it. A performance. They asked me questions about my life. Things they should have already known if they'd been paying attention. "How's your health, Dad?" Rachel asked. "Are you taking care of yourself?" I'd had a minor heart attack 2 years ago. Spent 3 days in the hospital alone because I didn't want to bother them. None of them had known because none of them had called to find out. "I'm doing okay," I said. Lisa jumped in. "You should really get a full checkup now that you can afford it. A full physical. Maybe even see a specialist." See a specialist, so I'd live long enough for them to figure out how to get my money, I thought. But I just smiled. "That's a good idea, baby. I'll look into it." The conversation kept circling back to the money. Always the money. Brad talked about investment opportunities. "Real estate is hot right now," he said, cutting into his prime rib. "You could really grow this wealth if you're smart about it." Jennifer mentioned charitable giving. "It's important to give back," she said, sipping her wine. "Tax deductible, too. We could help you identify some worthy causes." Worthy causes. I'd been a worthy cause for 73 years, and none of them had cared. But now, suddenly, they were concerned about my charitable giving. Daniel was the smoothest. He didn't talk about money directly. He talked about family. "You know, Dad, I've been thinking. We should spend more time together. Real time. Maybe you could come stay with us for a while. Get out of that apartment. We have plenty of room." Plenty of room now. Not on Christmas 3 years ago, but now. Meredith chimed in. "We'd love to have you, Robert. Really. You shouldn't be alone anymore. You're family." Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. I was family when it was convenient. Family when I had something they wanted. But where was family when I was eating microwave dinners alone on Thanksgiving? I excused myself to use the bathroom, and as I walked down the hallway, I heard them. They thought I was out of earshot, but the bathroom door didn't close all the way, and their voices carried. "We need to be careful," Jennifer was saying. "If he makes any major decisions before consulting us, we could lose out." "He's not going to cut us out," Daniel said. "He's our father." "Still," Brad added, "we should probably talk to him about setting up a trust for the grandkids. That way it's protected." They were planning, strategizing, dividing up money that wasn't even theirs. I stood there, in that hallway, listening to my children plot. And I felt the last piece of my heart that still hoped for them just die. It was like feeling a light go out inside me. I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't even angry. I was just done. I came back to the table, and we finished dinner. I played along, smiled at their jokes, thanked Meredith for the meal, let them hug me goodbye, and promised to call soon. On the drive home, I'd finally gotten my truck fixed with some of the lottery money. I made a decision. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted. My time, my attention, my presence. I was going to let them wine me and dine me and perform their love for me. And then, when they least expected it, I was going to show them the truth. I was going to hold up a mirror and make them see exactly what they'd become. If you've ever been used by someone you loved, you know this feeling. This moment where you stop fighting it and start planning. That's where I was. And I had a plan. For the next month, I let them think they were winning. I had dinner with Daniel and Meredith every Sunday. I went to Rachel's house for coffee on Thursdays. I met Lisa and Jennifer for brunch on Saturdays. I was the perfect, grateful father, soaking up attention I'd been starved for. And the whole time, I was watching, taking notes, seeing exactly how far they'd go. Rachel was the most obvious. She'd bring me listings for condos, talk about how I needed to invest in my future. She suggested I buy a place near her in Birmingham. We could see each other all the time. Dad! All the time. The phrase was almost funny. Brad started bringing me business proposals, actual printed proposals for investments he wanted me to make. Just think about it, Robert, he'd say, leaving the folders with me. These are ground floor opportunities. Ground floor opportunities to funnel my money into his pockets. Daniel took a different approach. He talked about family legacy, about setting things up so the grandkids would be taken care of. You work so hard for us, Dad. Now you can make sure the next generation has it even better. He brought me forms to look at, trust documents, estate planning materials, all of it designed to lock up my money in ways that would benefit them. I didn't sign anything. I'd just nod and say I needed time to think. No rush, Dad, he'd say, but I could see the impatience in his eyes, the worry that I might do something stupid with my money before he could get his hands on it. Lisa was the quietest about it, but she was there at every gathering, watching, waiting. She'd ask gentle questions about my plans, my wishes, my dreams for the future. All of it intelligence gathering. All of it designed to figure out how to position herself for maximum benefit. But the moment that really broke me, came on a Tuesday afternoon in December. I'd been invited to Daniel's house again. Just a casual visit, Meredith had said. When I arrived, there was a man in a suit sitting in their living room. Daniel introduced him as Gregory Ashford, a financial planner. Dad, I know we've talked about getting you some professional help with the money, Daniel said. Greg here is one of the best. I thought you two could chat. It was an ambush. A planned, coordinated ambush to get me to sign over control of my finances. Gregory started his pitch. Conservative investments, wealth preservation, estate planning. All the buzzwords designed to scare an old man into letting someone else manage his money. And as he talked, I watched Daniel and Meredith nodding along, playing their parts perfectly. This was it. This was the moment they'd been building toward. Get Dad to sign some papers, and they'd have access to the money even while I was still alive. I let Gregory finish his presentation. Then I looked at my son. You planned this, I said quietly. You brought me here to ambush me into signing with this man. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Dad, it's not an ambush. We're just trying to help. Help, I repeated. Like you helped me on Christmas 3 years ago when you closed the door in my face. Like you helped me when I spent Thanksgiving alone eating a $3 turkey dinner. Like you helped me when I called you crying on my 71st birthday and you let it go to voicemail. The room went silent. Meredith's face went pale. Gregory started gathering his papers, clearly sensing he'd walked into something. Mr. Mitchell, maybe you should leave, I said, standing up. And Daniel, I think I should leave too. I walked toward the door, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. Daniel followed me. Dad, wait, please. I know we haven't been perfect, but we love you. We're trying to protect you. I turned and looked at him, really looked at him. Protect me or protect your inheritance? The word hung in the air between us. Inheritance. The thing we'd been dancing around for weeks. The real reason for all the dinners and the visits and the sudden concern. Daniel's face crumpled. That's not fair, Dad. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? I asked. Tell me the truth, son. When's the last time you visited me before I won this money? When's the last time you called just to talk? When's the last time I mattered to you for anything other than what I could give you? He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because we both knew the truth. I left his house and I drove home. And for the first time since I'd won that lottery, I felt something like relief. The pretending was over. The performance was done. Now it was time for the truth. I called a family meeting, asked all 3 of my children to come to my apartment the following Saturday. No spouses, just them and me. They all came, probably thinking I was finally ready to discuss the money, ready to divvy it up, ready to play my role as the grateful father who rewards his children for finally pretending to love him. They crowded into my tiny living room, and I could see the anticipation on their faces, the greed barely hidden behind concerned eyes. I didn't offer them wine or coffee or snacks. I just stood in front of them, and they started talking. I want to tell you a story, I said, about a man who had 3 children. He loved more than his own life. This man worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to make sure his kids had everything. He skipped meals so his daughter could have a violin. He worked night shifts for 15 years so his son could be a doctor. He cashed out his entire retirement so his youngest could have her dream wedding. They shifted uncomfortably. Rachel looked down at her hands. This man sacrificed everything, I continued. His health, his sleep, his future. And you know what he got in return? He got 3 children who couldn't be bothered to visit him, who turned him away at their doors, who made excuses every holiday, who treated him like a burden instead of the man who gave them everything. Dad, Daniel started, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. This man, he spent years wondering what he did wrong, why his children didn't love him anymore, why he wasn't good enough for them. And then one day, he won the lottery. $42 million. And suddenly, his children remembered he existed. Suddenly, they wanted to have dinner. Suddenly, they cared about his health, and his future, and his happiness. Suddenly, he was worth their time. Lisa was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones I'd seen over the past few weeks. Daddy, please. You want to know what I'm going to do with the money? I asked. You want to know how I'm going to spend it? I'll tell you. I already did it. This week, I signed papers donating $25 million to the children's home across town. The one that helps kids who don't have parents. Kids who are actually alone in this world, not just abandoned by ungrateful children who should know better. The room erupted. Daniel stood up, his face red. You what? You gave away our... He stopped himself, but the damage was done. Your what, Daniel? Your money? It was never yours. You didn't earn it. You didn't work for it. You just showed up with your hand out after ignoring me for years. Rachel was shaking her head. Dad, this is crazy. You can't just give away that much money. What about your future? What about you, you mean? I said. What about your inheritance? That's what this has always been about. Jennifer, who hadn't even been invited, had apparently been waiting outside. She burst through my door, Lisa having texted her. "This is financial abuse," she shouted. "You're being manipulated by someone. This isn't a rational decision." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Financial abuse? I'm being abused? By who? The children's home full of orphans? Or maybe you're talking about how you all have abused me financially and emotionally for years, taken everything I gave and given nothing back? Meredith came in behind Jennifer. Brad followed. My apartment was full of angry people who suddenly cared very much about my money and not at all about me. The yelling escalated. Accusations flew. Daniel said I was being irresponsible. Rachel said I was punishing them. Lisa said I was being cruel. And through it all, I just stood there, calm, finally seeing them clearly. "You want to know what's cruel?" I asked when they finally quieted down. "Cruel is turning away your father on Christmas. Cruel is making him eat Thanksgiving dinner alone. Cruel is treating him like a stranger after he gave you everything." "We were busy," Meredith shouted. "We have lives, Robert. We can't drop everything every time you want attention." "Attention," I repeated softly. "I didn't want attention. I wanted love. I wanted to be part of your lives. I wanted what I gave you, family." The fight went out of the room. They all just stood there, confronted with the truth they'd been running from. "I have $1 million left," I said. "I'm keeping it for myself, for my apartment, my health, my life. The rest is gone, given to people who need it more than my children, who have everything and still wanted more." Daniel's voice was broken when he spoke. "Dad, you don't understand. We do love you. We got caught up in our own lives. We didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "You did hurt me every single day for years. And the worst part? You only came back when I had something you wanted. You proved that I was never enough on my own. I was only valuable when I was useful." They left that day, and I haven't seen most of them since. Daniel tried calling a few times, left messages apologizing, saying he wanted to make things right. Rachel sent letters, long ones, talking about therapy she'd started, about realizing how she'd failed me. Lisa showed up once, stood outside my door crying, begging me to let her in so she could explain. I didn't. Some things can't be explained away. Some wounds cut too deep to heal with apologies. The children's home sent me a letter thanking me for the donation. They told me they were naming a wing after Gloria, my late wife. The Gloria Mitchell Wing. They sent pictures of the new facilities they were building. Clean beds for kids who'd never had them, a library, a music room. I looked at those pictures and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride, purpose, like maybe all that suffering, all that sacrifice had finally meant something. Mrs. Patterson from next door, she was the only person who really understood. We sat on the stoop one evening in spring, watching the sun set over Brightmoor. "You did the right thing," she said. Those kids needed to learn they can't treat people like garbage and expect rewards." I nodded. I thought I was teaching them to be good people. Turns out I taught them they could have anything they wanted without earning it. She patted my hand. "You can't blame yourself for how they turned out. At some point they made their own choices." Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd given them too much. Or maybe I'd given them everything except consequences. Either way, I couldn't change the past. I could only decide what to do with whatever future I had left. I'm 74 now. I still live in my one-bedroom apartment, though I fixed it up nice with some of my remaining money. New roof, new appliances, new furniture that doesn't have duct tape holding it together. I take trips sometimes. Went to New Orleans last year like I always dreamed. Saw Jazz Fest. Ate beignets at Café du Monde. Walked along the Mississippi River and felt young again, even if just for a moment. I help out at the children's home once a week. Read to the kids. Tell them stories. Show them that someone cares. They call me Grandpa Robert, and when they say it, it means something. It's not obligation. It's not duty. It's just love. The simple, uncomplicated kind I thought I had with my own children. Lisa did eventually get through to me. She called from a different number, and I answered before I realized it was her. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. She told me she'd left Jennifer, that the marriage had been falling apart for years, that she'd been using their relationship to avoid dealing with her own issues. She apologized. Not the surface kind of apology, but the deep kind that comes from real reckoning. I was ashamed, Daddy, she said. Ashamed that I'd become someone who could treat you that way. Ashamed that money mattered more to me than you did. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I forgive myself, but I needed you to know I see it now. I see what we did. We meet for coffee sometimes now, Lisa and me, once a month. We don't talk about the money. We don't talk about the past too much. We just talk about her new job teaching music at a community center, about my trips, about Gloria, and how much we both miss her. It's not everything. It's not what we could have had, but it's something. And at my age, something is more than nothing. Rachel and Daniel, they're different stories. Rachel sent me a check last year, $25,000. A note with it that said, I know this doesn't make up for anything, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I donated it to the children's home in her name. Sent her a thank you card letting her know. She called crying. You didn't have to do that, Dad. I know, I said, but those kids need it more than I do. Daniel, he's the hardest one. He sent me a letter 6 months ago, 6 pages, front and back, talking about his marriage failing, about Meredith leaving him, about realizing he'd become someone he didn't recognize. I became a doctor to make you proud, he wrote. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that making you proud meant being a good person, not just a successful one. I forgot that you loved me before I was anything. And I'm sorry I couldn't love you the same way. I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Some hurts take time to process, and I'm giving myself permission to take that time. The truth is, I thought this story would end with me completely alone, bitter, maybe even full of regret about giving away the money. But that's not how it ended. I'm not alone. I have Mrs. Patterson. I have the kids at the children's home. I have Lisa, slowly, carefully, trying to rebuild something real. I have my dignity. I have peace. Real peace. Not the fake kind you get from people performing love for you. And peace don't come cheap. I paid for mine with $42 million and 3 children who had to learn the hard way that their father was worth more than his bank account. Was it worth it? Some days I think yes. Some days I'm not sure. But I'll tell you this. I sleep better now than I have in years. I don't lie awake wondering why I'm not good enough. I don't torture myself trying to figure out what I did wrong. I know what I did. I loved too much and expected too little in return. And I know what they did. They took advantage of that love until it ran dry. If you've stayed with me this whole time, watching from whatever part of the world you're in, I want you to know something. Your worth isn't determined by what you can give people. Your worth isn't measured in dollars or sacrifices or how much you're willing to bleed yourself dry. You're valuable just because you're here, just because you're human. And anyone who can't see that, even if they're your own children, doesn't deserve access to your heart. I'm Robert James Mitchell. I'm 74 years old. I won the lottery and gave most of it away. And I'd do it again. Because the only thing worse than being alone is being surrounded by people who only love you for what you can give them. I chose to be alone on my terms, with my dignity intact. And that, my friends, is worth more than all the money in the world. That's my story. That's my truth. And if it helps even one person see their worth, then maybe all of this, the pain, the betrayal, the loss, maybe it all meant something after all.